Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and Stacy, in this episode 281. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host on this lovely Sunday morning, Stacy. That is at StacyPatton89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing?
Doing well. I am coming to you guys from Dubai. Assalamu alaikum.
Nice. The international version of the pod continues. But before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check it out. That is at thestrick.land on Instagram. Give us a follow. We are posting all kinds of new content on there. Also, the Strickland has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you haven't already, please hit like and then subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland mailbag that comes out every week, hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, a.k.a. the Doug Bag, alongside it, Dallas Amico. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful weekly premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. There's going to a variety of additional benefits like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. So without further ado, let's get started. The Knicks won a basketball game yesterday. They beat the Denver Nuggets 116-110 in what was maybe their most, I don't know if I want to say complete, but it's a total team victory. And it was pretty awesome. They came back from 13 down. They kind of turned the game around in the middle of the third quarter. I don't know. I'm just very, very happy watching this team. And I will say this, I think Tibbs deserves some credit. I actually thought the tech he got yesterday was kind of
Galvanizing.
Yeah, I thought it was a well-timed technical. I think it was somewhat intentional. And the game really turned right then. So yeah, I mean, I would say he deserves credit. Obviously, the players all deserve credit. It was a very, very great all-around win yesterday, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to complain about. I mean, there were, not to say there weren't bad stretches, but it was more impressive than the bad stretches was how they responded. I think that this is a team that handles adversity. That's really, I think, the biggest story in the difference between this year and last year. We talk about kind of how Randall's attitude is the word everyone's going to use, whatever you want to call it, his mental framework. He's had a much more positive outlook, it seems. He's responded much better for the most part, with an exception here or there, to calls not going his way, to maybe where he might have I think there was late in yesterday's game, he posted up Jamal Murray, or I think he posted up Aaron Gordon, and he made a really nice move, even though that's not really a mismatch in the strictest sense. He made a nice move, scored. The next possession, I think you tweeted about it. It was one of his worst decisions of the day. I think he kind of went into help. And then Clyde even said oh, that's a 3-second violation, but he also threw the ball away. It was 6 seconds. So
yeah,
it was just really bad. But after that, he didn't spiral out of control, right? I think when those things have happened this year, he's responded. And I think as a team, that's shown, right? Mitchell Robinson, he had some moments in the first half, but he really struggled with Jokic as he has in the past. We saw how he came back yesterday. You saw this team after, we've seen that earlier in the season, when it was halftime and they actually lost the lead, I was like, I think this could get ugly. I've seen this game before where the Knicks come out hot, a lot of energy after a rest against a big opponent, and the other opponent is seasoned. They've been here. They do just enough to stay close and weather the storm. And then in the second half, they run away with it, right? We've seen the Sixers do that to the Knicks this season a couple of times. We've seen some other teams, kind of do that. And the Nuggets, it looked like in the third quarter when it got to 13, it looked like we were headed to another, 114-90 type of game, right? And that didn't happen. And I think that, I think Mitchell Robinson was the biggest reason for that. And we can talk about that. But I think in general, you've seen this team in the second half, later in games, just have a much better response to adversity than they had last year, for sure, and even earlier this season. And it's fair to say, some might say, like that Fred Katz article, I've been thinking a lot more about it. It's like we've been winning a lot more close games of late. Maybe it really is randomness. A lot of it,
It's not
where
randomness. It's not randomness.
maybe that might be a component of it, right? Where that was the argument that was made. I think that it's a little bit more to that. I think everyone on the team, including Tom Thibodeau, has been better. There might be some of that, but it just seems like this team has a much better attitude to how they handle adversity. And the last thing I'll say, I mean, if you are going to build a team like that, Josh Hart, I couldn't think of a guy more who that describes than Josh Hart. And the last little anecdote I'll say is, and I've been talking for a while, so I'll definitely turn it over to you. But last thing I'll say is there's like a famous clip from it was Josh Hart was on the first team that won the Villanova championship, right? The one that the buzzer beater against North Carolina.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure him and Brunson are on that team.
Yeah, Brunson was a freshman. So there's a famous clip from that where Jay Wright, the coach, as soon as the shot went up, he's just like bang, and then he has no emotion. He just walks over to shake the guy's hand, and he's talked about that. But like a big part of that program is, how do you handle things like they say attitude. It's something they beat home. And it's like, how do you handle things when things go wrong, right? That's like something that's been core. And obviously he had a ton of success. And it might sound like another cliched sports term. But I do think having Brunson and Hart as two of your leaders coming from, like, whether or not you believe Villanova maybe exemplifies that more than others, we don't need to have a conversation about the program. Those two guys, for sure, when you watch a video about their coach talking about how much he emphasizes that, you can see it in both of those guys. Brunson didn't have things go his way, but he came back and made shots when it counted. Hart is a guy who will never stop working and doing what he does. Although he does have a little bit of a Pablo Prigioni pump fake-itis thing, which we can talk about later. But I think that is the biggest difference to me between this year and last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have more talent than they had last year. That's for sure. Obviously, Brunson is a better player than any of the guards they had available to them last year. At least, Kemba and Derrick Rose and Alec Burks, those guys were just not suited to play lead guard last year.
He's not Brunson's level of offensive player. Like we love Quickly. He's not. I mean, Brunson is on offense. He is I would say a top 5 guard personally, but.
I'm just not going to entertain that conversation because I just don't I don't think you can have a true evaluation of that because we've never just been like, quick, go play 40 minutes a night and run the offense. And when he did do that, last we saw him was dicking on the city of Boston. He's had plenty of big games as a lead guard that pop. So, I mean, I have no problem saying Brunson's better than him right now, but, he was definitely capable of playing lead guard last year. But obviously he's improved this year too. I think RJ's had a very weird season. Like, I actually think he's improved, but at the same time, it feels like he's worse this year, but it's not. I don't know. It's the skills, the skill set seems better, but his actual impact this year has kind of been up and down. It was really good to see him play the way he did last night or yesterday afternoon, whatever the fuck you want to put it.
That was maybe his best all-around game. Like, he's had obviously some big scoring outbursts. That might have been his best all-around game in a while. And I think that we've said that a couple of times, I think, recently. So
I mean, it was either that or is the double overtime game against Boston. One of those two is definitely his best game of the season. But yeah, I mean, like, on top of that, Hartenstein is better, way better than any of the backup centers we had last year. Mitch is better than he was last year, that's for sure. So you're getting Randall's way better than he was last year. I think Deuce, I mean, he's obviously not playing now, but he was better than he was
Rose
as rookie year. Yeah, I mean, he's played better. And then obviously you add Hart into the mix. That's a huge upgrade. Grimes, it's really hard to say if Grimes is better than he was last year because he just didn't play enough to have a feel for it. But Grimes has been solid. I know he's had a little bit of
he has more of an interior game, I would say. Like the drive and dish and that kind of stuff wasn't there at all last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely improved that. I think, like, I know he's had an up and down last few month and a half or so, but I think the defense is still fairly consistently very, very good, and I still believe in the shot. He went 3 of 5 yesterday from 3, which was nice to see. Hit a couple of big
Cam
ones.
Reddish, though.
Yeah, that's a good thing. But yeah, it was it was good to see all that. And yeah, I mean, this team is more suited. I don't think they're closing out games better because of luck or because any of that. Like I think they're better at closing out games because one, they have more talent, and then two, Tibbs has been more flexible with who he closes with, how he closes his lineups in the fourth. His lineups in general, I think he's showing more flexibility with, maybe not in terms of like going 5 out or something, but he's mixing and matching more, which is maybe indicative of like he trusts the talent at his disposal more evenly than he did last year. And then the other thing is just like they're more comfortable with each other. So I think they're more on the same page. They have more trust in each other than they did earlier in the season. And like, I mean, I just think there's a confluence of things that are leading to them being more successful in the stretch of games and turning fake comebacks into real comebacks and all that. I don't think it's just luck. And I think like I dismiss
But you
that.
don't think there's even a little bit of an element of
nope, none. Like
so
I think
you don't buy the Fred Katz. I mean, Fred Katz hasn't said this afterwards, but that was kind of the implication of that article, was that these kind of swings and wild like these things happen, and it's not.
Can I just be honest? I think that was like a bullshit. That article was a bullshit coping thing for Tibbs.
You said that at the time, and so it sounds like your views on that.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? I criticized Tibbs for all of that stuff at the start of the year. I put a lot of the blame on him for a lot of those losses to start the year, those close losses, those losses where he couldn't hold the lead in the fourth, all those things. But like, I'm giving him credit for it now. So to me, it's like, I think just chalking it up to luck is like you're using this broad, like he used like this broad sample of like the whole fucking NBA, of all the games played, of like all, and like devoid of context. Look at the fucking context of these games. Look at the fucking context of the lineups he was putting out there, the rotation decisions he was making, how he was deploying players. I mean, he's fucking got Evan Fournier and Derrick Rose in like fourth quarter crunch time minutes at the fucking start of the year. Like, we don't need to pretend like it's fluky that those guys stopped playing and all of a sudden magically the defense got better and we were a bet. Like, it's not a fluke. I mean, and same thing with Cam Reddish. All three of those guys disappear from the rotation. Magically, the team gets better on both ends of the floor. They're now capable of holding leads. They're capable of coming back in games. They're capable of getting a fucking defensive rebound every now and then. They're capable of like doing a lot more shit. Like, it's not luck. And chalking it up to luck is
they've
bullshit.
also gotten healthier, and
Hartenstein
obviously is another.
Hartenstein's
healthier. Brunson was out, but they had the ability to do that in part because guys have improved and have improved their health too. So
yeah, think of it, like it's not like, oh, all of a sudden now for like 2 or 3 months the Knicks magically, the luck, fortune is just favoring them now, and now they're magically able to close out these fucking games and hold fucking leads and all this shit. No, it's not luck. There's like tangible reasons for it, which we've discussed. Personnel, Tibbs improving as a coach.
It's not about luck, but is there like maybe the Knicks weren't as bad as closing games early in the season, and they're not quite as good at finishing as it might appear. Like, we're winning. Have we lost? I think someone tweeted yesterday, the Knicks have not lost post All-Star with a healthy Jalen Brunson. The only game they've lost where he's played is the Sacramento one, where he clearly re-injured himself. So,
I mean, like, they're getting defensive rebounds now. They did not get defensive rebounds to start the year. Like, that's not luck. That's literally talent. That is.
But I'm talking about specifically the end of game.
But that's part of the end of games. They couldn't get fucking defensive rebounds at the end of games. Like, go back and watch that fucking Portland game they lost at the start of the year. They couldn't get a defensive rebound. Josh Hart had 19 rebounds in that game or something.
Memphis is a great team. But that is the biggest reason we lost. Memphis is a great offensive rebounding team, but that we got killed.
We couldn't get a defensive rebound. All right, if you're watching this on YouTube, you may have seen that we have a third member joining up. He's a little bit late, but he's not always there when you call, and he's not actually always on time, but he is finally here. This is Kris Pursiainen. That is at Kris Pursiainen on Twitter. The young phenom rookie of the year of the Knicks beat is joining us.
Close
Kris,
personal friend of Action Bronson, apparently now.
Yeah, a close personal friend of Action Bronson. I thought you were gonna do like the Stephen A. Smith thing, like, oh yeah, I've had many conversations with Kris over the years. Kris, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, crazy when you're at home with your parents over spring break, and You're like, hey, I have this thing I need to do. And they're like, well, you didn't take the trash out. I'm like, I'm 20. And they're like, we don't care. So that's how my morning's gone. The Knicks are really good. So things have been pretty easy recently because I just get to cover a team that's really good. And that's easier than trying to explain why things are going wrong. And I think just the energy from the fan base recently has made it really easy too. I feel like everything I post from a game, any question I ask, it's just like everyone wanted to know that, as opposed to, why did they lose today? Why did this player not play well? Like
Why
Jalen
did this
Brunson,
player post an inappropriate Snapchat?
Jalen Brunson about vibes immaculate kind of vibe. Yeah, I think the Knicks are there.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is going well. I actually really liked. I thought Josh Hart's post game interview yesterday was really good. You asked him a pretty funny question where he said that he thought he could be a defensive end. I'm not sure about that, but more power to him. If he like, I'm like Josh, you probably had to put on about like you're big for an NBA guy, but you're probably gonna have to put on like 50, 60 pounds of muscle to be a defensive end, pal.
You can be a pass
But
rush specialist, right? I mean, just like
I don't think
he gets
235 is getting you on the field in the NFL on the edge, man. I'm sorry. But like he no, what I really liked was, I don't remember what the exact question was. They were kind of asking him like about the team, and he was giving credit to like, Jay Brunson, whoever. But then what I really liked is he went out of his way to bring up Deuce too, and like credit Deuce.
Oh, he
And
misheard a question. This was funny. That he was asked about the Knicks' depth in regards to like other NBA teams he's been on, in regards to other NBA teams in general. He's just, like, how deep is this Knicks team? And he misheard the question, and he thought he was asked if it was the deepest team he was ever on. He was like, yeah, it is. And that was funny because it was kind of, almost like not Freudian, but that kind of happening where it was a little accidental. And yeah, I had people, when I put out that quote of his in my replies, that were really enjoying that he shouted out Deuce, and he brought up the Portland, like he said the word Portland, or so like, yeah, everyone got their shouts. He was like, the starters are starters for a reason. The bench guys could be starters. The reserves could be bench guys. Like, this is nuts.
And he's played on some pretty deep teams. Like, he played on. I mean, everyone has praised New Orleans forever, right? On how they.
Can we just talk about this whole fucking thing where New Orleans is deep? You're not deep just because you drafted 15 fucking guys. Like, you're deep if those guys are actually good. That's what, New Orleans, like Dyson Daniels is there. What is he going to do in New Orleans? He's like this raw fucking ball of clay who's never going to play there. He's never going to get minutes, who can't fucking shoot, which is fine. Like, the entire point of drafting a guy like him is like, we are projecting he can shoot down the line. Like, okay, so you're projecting he can shoot.
At this moment.
Yeah, and like you see, like people are making such a big, Zion's out, so like, okay, well, Zion was out last year. They made the fucking playoffs and got fucking fellatioed to death for like their 36-46 play-in run and heroic first-round exit. But now this year, Zion's out and they suck and they can't fucking do anything, and they got their ass handed to them by Jabari fucking Smith. They got gained by Jabari Smith the other night, and it's like, okay,
so the Lakers are actually going to be able to keep their pick now too.
Pelinka is a better GM than David Griffin. Like, flat out, he's a better GM than David Griffin. Yeah, the Lakers have a better, more cohesive roster. He added like 5 rotation pieces at this deadline at the cost of what? Russell Westbrook, a first-round pick in 2027, and 3 seconds for Rui Hachimura, which they ended up recouping anyway because they fucking got 3 seconds for Thomas Bryant. And then he sent 2 of those out for Mo Bamba. So you do the math, but like, look at their roster right now. And this is without, mind you, LeBron James obviously is out for the rest of the year. D'Lo missed a bunch of time right after the trade. AD has obviously missed a bunch of time this season. Like, say what you want, and like, I'm not sitting here trying to act like Rob Pelinka is some fucking genius, but that's kind of the point. Is like, they've had enough. Okay, like the Pelicans have had what, 19. So they made the AD trade in what, summer of 2019. So they have had 1, 2. This is the 4th year. So basically 3.5 seasons, 4 seasons effectively since that trade. At what point are we like, okay, dude, it's cool that you made this trade and you got all this shit from it. At what point can we expect you to put together like a consistent winning team? At what point can I expect you, like, okay,
They should
Zion?
be Memphis level. They've had the same advantages in Memphis, and they
Like
haven't.
they've had Zion, like if you have Zion and Ingram, right? Forget that Zion's not healthy, right? If you have Zion and Ingram, what are you like? What is the skill set you absolutely need to put around them? Shooting. Look at, they fucking suck. They're 19th, I think, in 3-point percentage, but they're 27th in attempt rate. Like, they don't shoot enough. They don't shoot it all that fucking well. And like they went and got CJ McCollum last year at the deadline. He played well last year. I look at his percentages; they still look good. But like I'm telling you, you watch that guy fucking play. He's looks terrible this year.
Sounds
and
like Kemba before we got him.
yeah, and then on top of it, like, he's not actually a point guard. He's a scoring guard. It's a very different thing. He does not know how to run an offense very well.
Do you like him in his role?
No, I don't. I think he's no.
But he's
I
also not a point guard, and you don't even like him in this role.
Yeah, and the problem. And my point though is like, okay, and then so you gave him they gave him a fucking extension last summer. That's one of the worst contracts in the NBA. That is a terrible contract, and nobody talks about it because we got to sit here and pretend David Griffin is some fucking god. Like, he sucks.
Can I say one other thing?
And their depth fucking sucks. And people need to start talking about how their depth fucking sucks because
like earlier this season, that was all the rage. A writer who I respect very much, who I won't name, said Najee Marshall should be 6th man of the year, and I said, is he better than Emmanuel Quickly? And this writer who knows way more about basketball than me said Marshall's better. And I just think that didn't age very well. And then they were like, everyone was like, honestly, the Pelicans' whole bench should get 6th man of the year. And anyway, the point is, Josh Hart played on that team. He played on the Lakers before that when they had Lonzo. He was there for like the first LeBron year, right? Josh Hart in LA?
Yeah, the first year.
Yeah, so he's played on good teams. So for him to speak this highly, that was my original point, was he's played on teams with some quality players who've had some depth, a lot of good young players. So for him to speak this highly about the Knicks young players, it's not like he's played with a bunch of scrubs. This isn't some career, like, he's been on a bunch of teams, but he's been on some talented teams. So, to your point, Chris, I think that says a lot.
Yeah, I always thought it was weird that the trade that Griffin got the most credit for was the one where he undid the Adams signing to move back like 6 spots in the draft or whatever. Like, it was just like, what are we doing here? I don't know. I've talked to, you guys know Chip Murphy. He and I have talked for years about like how Griffin isn't good at what he is doing, like, for years and years, and people just don't care because LeBron or whatever. So yeah, when he signed Adams to that contract instantly after dealing for him for no reason, and then a year later had to move back 7 spots in the draft to jettison Bledsoe and Adams. Was it funny that the Grizzlies took Zaire and they got Trey Murphy 7 spots later, and that Murphy inarguably has been better so far? Yeah, sure. That's like Memphis, did whatever. They took an upside swing. Like, I love Trey Murphy that year. He's been great. But I don't know. Like, when your biggest success is like moving down in a draft and like jettisoning 2 bad contracts, and then that trade that you make doesn't go that well. Like, it's not like Valanciunas is some stud for them.
Didn't they extend Valanciunas too?
Yeah. It's just all like insane. Like the Knicks, I think, do a good job of turning mistakes into good steps forward. But they, have that planned like years out. Like, I think it's just all very different from all right, well, we're gonna sign for this guy and extend him. Oh, now he's not good. So we're gonna trade for this guy and extend him. Oh, he's not good. Now we're gonna trade him and extend this center and move back in this draft and whatever. Like, just all felt very off the cuff.
And speaking of the Knicks, so we still have people who are relitigating the the whole 11th pick thing. I saw you responded to someone who brought up Jalen Williams. Duran is obviously somebody who gets brought up a lot. How important do you think it is that the Knicks kind of there's people who still say, well, even if you say they traded to create the cap space for Brunson, that was their own fault. But on the other hand, do you think it's a sign in their direction that they were willing to acknowledge that the Nerlens Noel deal wasn't good. They were willing to acknowledge that Burks probably wasn't the best, as good of a player as he is. If you have the opportunity to move him for Brunson, do you think that speaks well to the fact that they would kind of how do you think they approach sunk costs that way? Is that kind of and they're not going to try to salvage those things? They're willing to cut bait if more than maybe other front offices.
Yeah, I think they see value in value, as Sean with the W has always said on KFS Study Hall. This front office values value a lot, and they're very confident in their own calculations and evaluations of things. So when they, calculate internally that getting Brunson is going to be more than worth it, and they'll get clowned on TV and for weeks and whatever, and they'll trade 3 players and that were in the rotation and 6 second-round picks and give up a 7th for tampering, which they probably knew they were going to end up having to do. That was more than worth it. Reddish and the pick for Hart, more than worth it so far, right? So to me, it's a matter
Reddish
of
was also another, they traded the 19th pick.
exactly.
Instead of doubling down on that, they were willing to, cut bait.
So to me, it's different from when you see a team like a Pelicans, go in a direction, stay in that direction for 1 year, and then be like, oh, this didn't work, let's blow it up. Like the Knicks are actively trying everything. They're trying the different rotations. I feel like they're good about at the start of the season giving people fair shots. Even if they're out of the rotation, like Reddish played for several games at the start of this year. So
Reddish played the first 23 games.
Yeah, it's not that they turn their missteps into positive steps forward. Like I think that's underselling it. It's like they will use a pair of sneakers, even if the sneakers blow out, like they will upcycle them and make it something even like way better. They're the kind of designers that make those couches out of all the Jordans. I don't even know how to put it. Like it's just stuff that you couldn't even imagine that was possible to do with such a depressed asset. They're like, hey, this is a player. This is a decent player. Let's turn this player into something. While many would be like, oh, they stunk. They're not worth anything. Oh, you got to give a pick up and attach picks to them. Detroit was like really happy to make that trade with them. Detroit thought they were fleecing New York.
They did. They got Jalen Duran. He had a double-double the other night. So
it could be a win-win, right? I think might have been.
It is a win-win. Except they decided they needed to trade for James Wiseman. So congrats to the Pistons who believed in Jalen Duran so much they immediately were like, you know what we need to do? We need to go get another young developing center who has no idea how to play basketball right now. Sorry.
So the Pistons like front office was really happy to like get Walker, Burks, Noel at the cost of -6 second-round picks. Like they thought that was like, whoa, like we're just doing it up right now. And they
got a second first in the it's a weird transaction, right? Because they effectively got a first. Yeah, they got a first for a future one from Milwaukee, basically. Like they swapped a future one that they had from Milwaukee that they got for Jeremy Grant. And they used that to get the 13th pick, which the Knicks got in that trade with Charlotte. And that was the trade. But yeah, they were happy to happy to eat the negative contracts the Knicks wanted, or the salary the Knicks wanted to dump anyway, for the 6 seconds, along with, doing that pick swap kind of thing.
Yeah, they thought that was all like novel and cool. So it's not like the Knicks are, I'd put out a report one time that rubbed some people the wrong way, where I was like, I was told from Detroit area places that, like, when it came to the Ivy stuff, the Knicks were like unpleasant to negotiate with, and it was because they were a mess and all over the place in that negotiation. And everyone was like, "Oh, like, this and this and this," and I'm like, "Hey, like, that's not some damning statement. I didn't report that the Knicks are difficult to trade with. I reported that in the Jaden Ivey negotiations, they were reportedly by the team that they wouldn't pay the price to, not the best to deal with. So, like,
So when you say they were a mess to deal with, they were a mess and all over the place. Do you mean there were conflicting evaluations of the players involved in Ivy?
yeah, it was like they're trying to get a trade done, and it felt like it felt like that, trying to close a deal on a house, and the people on the other side were still picking between two houses or whatever. Like, it was just like they felt like the Knicks were trying to get kind of uh uh sketchy on them and whatever. And then the next day or whatever, like, whatever, like, the day of the draft, they were so happy to to take Walker and all these guys, or not the day of the draft, before free agency. They were so happy to deal with the Knicks. I heard they loved dealing with the Knicks, and it was just like, like, people like to be dramatic, thing to thing, event to event, but overall, this Knicks front office is like super analytical. Knicks are one of the most analytically invested teams in sports, not basketball, sports. And so they really care about what analytics say. They really care about efficiency and not just field goal percentage. I mean, like, efficiency and time on the court. And that's why you saw an evaluation internally of someone like Quickly change so much so fast, was because when it did come all together for him in larger minutes, they're like, oh, that's a really good player. Probably shouldn't trade him. Okay. That was it. They're willing to be wrong. They're willing to change their evaluation. They just always have an evaluation. And so that allows them to bet on things like will be better than Dallas for the rest of the year. Which I can't tweet about that one enough. Obviously, there are different things, but they traded Dallas's, and how would it have conveyed and whatnot. Okay, I think Portland doesn't think Luka's not making a, like, I think that the Knicks straight up said we're going to be better than Luka's team with Kyrie Irving, and the league was like, haha, and now they're like 10 games better than them. So that's how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I'll never get this is like, I mean, what you reported is something separate, but like, when the Mitchell trade talks were happening, they didn't get Mitchell, and there was all this talk of like, oh, look, the Knicks are just difficult to negotiate with, and it's like, I don't understand what the fuck that means. Like, I don't. Is it like, do you want to be easy to negotiate with? That doesn't seem like a reputation you want to have around the league, because for the longest time, the Knicks were a very easy team to negotiate with. You wanted a first round pick, hit up the Knicks; they'll probably give you one. Like, it's not a good reputation to have to be a great.
My favorite thing is the Knicks fans who, and I'm not trying to like speak down on anyone of the Knick faithful. I just think that sometimes people are so invested that they can't really see something if it's this close. And I'm the same way with things in my own personal life, so I get it. But for people of the Knick faithful to say, oh, this is an affront to humanity that the Knicks are hard to deal with. This is why, lazy Leon is never going to make a trade. And then the next day, someone reports like Danny Ainge wanted this in a trade, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's real leadership! Like, that's how to do it right there." I'm like, "What?" Like, corporate wants you to find the difference between these two images. Like,
it's also the whole thing about. This is what I brought up. When you mentioned, is there? It seems like there's a lot of voices in the room. So you have that whole, Yaron Weitzman has
There
written
are.
about this. Right, but is that a bad thing also? Like, because I think
it's
in the
not a
past,
bad thing. It's never a bad thing. It's
a good thing to get a diversity of opinions, right?
It's a bad thing.
Biggest power broker in sports to determine which of those voices is most right. So I'm okay with that.
So far, he's pretty good at it.
I mean, so there's a few things like, yeah, I never understood that, especially because like the reputation of guys like Danny Ainge or Masai Ujiri or any of these dudes is like, they take their pound of flesh. Like, you don't want to get at a negotiating table with these guys. So they're not easy to deal with. But why is that a good thing for them? But it's a bad thing if like Leon Rose is not easy to deal with. Like, it feels like being a tough negotiator is a good thing to some extent, as long as you're not stubborn, and the Knicks aren't stubborn.
It's also the Knicks seem to get criticized for, they get criticized for you always, instead of building the quote unquote the right way. And I think people who make this criticism have no idea what the fuck they're talking about often. The Knicks need to build the right way instead of chasing the big stars. And then they don't trade for Donovan Mitchell, and the same people are like, they can't get the trade done for the superstar. What do you want, right? Which one do you want?
Well,
you can't have it both ways, right?
Yeah, and I think like, it is what it is. Like, people are going to shit on the Knicks. It's fine, but like, I just don't really understand that one. It just doesn't ever make sense to me. And then like, they don't, when they're wrong, I don't think they don't stay anchored to like trying to justify bad deals they've made or contracts they've given or whatever. Like, we've seen this, right? Obviously, like, a lot of teams would not do what they did on draft night, which was effectively trading out of 11 with 6 second-round picks to get 3 future protected first and dump a bunch of salary to make space for Brunson and Hartenstein. Like, I get that. Like, I would have, if I was Leon Rose, I don't know if I would have the balls to do that, but because like, you were taking a big bet, right? That Brunson, yes, he had played really well without Luka, but it's like, okay, now can you do this as the main guy on a team? Like, it's hard to know, but they took that bet. And obviously that's paid out, and that move has paid off for OKC too. So good for them. Like, Jalen Williams looks like a really fucking awesome player. And we've talked about this. Like, I think sometimes, like, I wonder, like, is there a world where we draft Jalen Williams? What does that look like? Like, what's the whatever? But like, you can't operate in what I would have done. I think you have to evaluate the moves they made in real time and how they've panned out and how that sets the team up. And like, you can't objectively look at that trade and be like, they got fleeced. They didn't get anything. Like, you can't not include Jalen Brunson as part of that trade. Like, they clearly made that trade to clear space for Jalen Brunson, and that trade also cleared space for them to sign Isaiah Hartenstein, who's been playing really fucking good ball for the last 2 or 3 months now. And
I was just about to add, I don't like when you look at his number of 8, like, it's not a coincidence that slides into the
Oh no, it's not a coincidence. They knew the guy's fucking CAA. He signed like 10 minutes into free agency.
I did the thread on the Knicks connection with Dallas and with the Porzingis trade and now this, their picks now. Someone responded how this wasn't the intricate plan I made it out to be. The Knicks didn't know that Brunson was going to be available later on. I was like, okay, his godfather runs the team. Like, the guy's godfather is paid to run the team.
And Hartenstein is CAA. Like, he signed literally like 5 minutes into free agency. If you don't think the Knicks already had that lined up when they made those deals,
suggesting they tampered?
I am 100% suggesting they tampered.
Well, he signed at 6:01. Yeah. Brunson signed the next day or whatever and was hit with the tampering charge. Yeah. Hartenstein, no tampering charge, 6:01. Yeah. This means, and I've debated this with the other beat guys. This means, according to the NBA, at 6:00 sharp, the New York Knicks called the representatives of Isaiah Hartenstein, and they said,
we would like out a $16.7 million deal.
We would like you to be a New York Knickerbocker. Now, we've got about 50 seconds left before it's 6:01. Remember, we have to get this deal to Woj before 6:01. So 10 seconds in, we'd like you to be a Knick. Hartenstein says, I'm all in. Let's debate. 30 seconds into the phone call, first offer, no good. Second offer, accepted. 45 seconds into the phone call, they text Woj, deal done, 2 years, 16.7.
They just need to just make the period between after the draft until free agency starts a legal tampering period like the NFL has. That's just what they need to do, because it's this entire thing is pointless.
It basically is one now.
Yeah, right.
Teams just, the penalization is just a second round pick. Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, and then the other thing, like you're talking about different voices in the room. Like, so all the report, like we've seen reporting, I think Jaron Weitzman's written about it, other people, that it's like unlike a lot of other organizations, and not just in the sense of like there are multiple voices, but everybody has like a loud voice and they all get heard. And like, I don't know how other organizations work. I mean, maybe I'm sure there's some level of truth to that. But what I will say is, like, while there might be tensions that flare up from that, I think what you've seen this year, what the Knicks have become, is a result of Leon listening to those multiple voices and picking and choosing when to listen to which guy. Like, we can sit here, like, Mitchell Robinson was fucking awesome yesterday. I think he's been really, really good this season. This is definitely his best season as a pro. But, like, I think if Brock Aller had his way, I think Mitchell Robinson is gone last year at the trade deadline. I think he would have gotten moved. But guess what? Leon was like, okay, Tibbs literally wants to marry Mitchell Robinson. I'm listening to Tibbs on this one. And he kept Mitchell Robinson.
You, Mrs. Robinson.
and he listened to Tibbs on that one, and it worked out. Like, he listened to Tibbs effectively in, like, basically, like, listen, it's cool you guys thought Cam Reddish was worth it. The kid fucking sucks, bro. Like, I'm not playing him. Let me play dudes. Whatever it is, like, they didn't interfere with his decision anyway, or they helped him get to that decision. However it happened, like, there's multiple voices being listened to, right? Like when they drafted Emmanuel Quickly, the guy at the table banging for that the most was Wes. But they didn't just sit at 23 and take Quickly. Like, Brock Aller was like, look, we can get Quickly at 25. Let's trade down, get a couple extra picks, and we'll still draft the kid. But it's like he's picking when to listen to individual, members of the kind of, like, the inner circle, right? Like, Walt Perrin, I'm sure, had input on multiple draft picks. I'm sure that he listened to scouts and listened to their internal guys in doing the trade they made last year to clear the space for Brunson. Like I don't think that was the only way they could dump the salary that was required for Brunson and Hartenstein. I think they probably made the evaluation that was it was an optimal way to do it because they were still recouping draft capital that they could use in the future. And, like, look, I know that protected first never have any value, and there's no, like, guess what? We're probably going to get, like, a mid-teens pick from Dallas, because even though they have Luka Doncic, who apparently, if he's on your roster, there's no way you can win less than 50 plus games in a season. Like, that's never happened before. Certainly Houston never only went 42-40 during one of James Harden's prime years. That never happened. Like, people want to dismiss these protected first they got. We won't know until they actually fucking convey, and they will convey. Like, I'm very, very positive that all of those picks will convey as actual first round picks. We don't know when exactly, but they will. And look, again,
or you use them to get a guy like Josh Hart.
Right, exactly. So, like, there's multiple reasons to go get those picks, and there's multiple ways to use them. Like, but the point being is, like, I think Leon Rose, again, like, what I would guess is, like, there's been reports, right? Like, oh, Wes is the guy that has Dolan's ear or whatever the fuck it is. And it's like, what I would guess is just that, like, Leon is very, like, secure in himself and in his position, and he's happy to let other guys have louder voices or whatever. But when push comes to shove, who do you think is making these calls? It's obviously on Leon Rose. And so like,
his major skill seems to be knowing when to weigh Aller's opinion more, when to weigh Wes's opinion more, like when to, how to, like, kind of weigh. It's like the meta model that he has in his head of all of these different voices, as opposed to any specific
and that's like the greatest skill you can have in management, right? Is, like, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of the people that are around you, and understanding, like, when is a good time to lean on Wes, when's a good time to lean on Aller, when's a good time to lean on Tibbs, when's a good time to lean on fucking Gerson Rosas or whatever the fuck, whoever it is, Walt Perrin. Like, it's important, and like, I think what you see this year is, like, look, he's the first time executive of an NBA team. I know that he ran a sport, like a basketball agency. I know he's one of the super agents of the NBA, but, like, that's not the same thing as running a team, right? That's a totally different. It's a completely different.
He also, like, to his credit, meddled in Knicks front office operations for a good while. But again,
he got his guys paid by the Knicks for a long time. Andrea Bargnani, CAA guy, like, definitely got him to New York.
But
Thank you.
I don't know. What analogy is good here? Like, being the, off day friend that you see once a week and you play basketball with is much different than being the roommate, and now he's the roommate of the team. Like he's there all day, every day, running everything. It's different than, once a week we'll hang out, buy you a coffee, you buy me $16 million worth of
Being
salary.
the side piece is not the same thing as being the main piece, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted
being the
to do
Gumar
a
is not the same as being the wife.
I wanted to do a Sopranos Gumar reference, and I was like, it's too early. I'm gonna mess it up and screw myself.
But like, the thing is, right? Like, so while he's like, so the first 2 years, like, I think they did a pretty solid job overall. But I think you saw some of like the teething issues that come with first time exec, not worked on basketball on the side of basketball operations previously, right? Like they weren't like, it's obvious that the Cam Reddish trade was one that certain people in the organization pushed for, and it's okay if Tibbs wasn't on board with it, but the fact that they like were not able to impress upon him, like, hey, we need to see this fucking kid play. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's there's something there where it's like something got lost in translation. And I do think like Tibbs was just being stubborn about it, but like you knew Tibbs, you hired Tibbs. Tibbs is like your guy forever. You should have known that like he might respond in that way. And I think like, you come into this season and like you still have Derrick Rose in the roster, you still have Evan Fournier, like you want to start these guys, whatever. Like, but I think it feels like this year they kind of like, I don't know. I'm assuming they must have had some like come to Jesus moment when they were 10 and 13. And it was like, look, like we got to get this shit together. And the way to do that is probably to remove some of these dudes from the rotation. And like, I think that was probably a collective decision. And I think Tibbs deserves a ton of credit for it. I think Leon Rose deserves a ton of credit for it. But like, so you see them make this move. And then you see like the Josh Hart trade, which seems like the perfect confluence of like, he makes sense from the front office perspective, contractually, what price he comes in at, but then he also works like on the on-court side, right? Because of what he addresses, first of all, right? Like he addresses all these weaknesses the Knicks had, additional ball handling, defensive rebounding, pushing pace, all these defensive ability on the wing, like all these things that they needed. He is a great intangibles guy in the locker room. Like he's obviously a leader. He immediately has come in and he has the biggest dick energy possible. And like, and then the best part about this, right, is like, you knew he was a guy that Tibbs was going to play and that Tibbs like would love to have. So it seems like, okay, Tibbs wants these things. Who are the best guys we can go get on the market that could give us a conceivable upgrade this season for it? What's the best value to go get out there? Josh Hart is available. Let's trade Cam Reddish. Let's trade these guys who aren't playing, right? They traded guys who weren't playing. Cam, Svi, Archie Diacono, who will be back, I'm assuming, in the offseason. And was there somebody else they traded? I don't remember. Whatever. They cobbled together enough salary to move these guys. They didn't take away anybody in the rotation who was part of the rotation. They didn't trade Deuce, who, like, I would bet if you asked Tibbs, like, would you be fine if we had to trade Deuce in this deal? He'd probably be like, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to play Josh Hart over Deuce. But, like, the front office still values Deuce, which was reported by Fred Katz before the deadline. And, like, they just got a guy who clearly makes them a tangibly better team. And you feel like just look at how these guys are playing. And I'm not talking about like how well they're playing, but like how they are playing. They are playing with like a collective joy as a team. They are enjoying playing like off of each other. There's like a camaraderie. They're not upset when, like, dude, Emmanuel Quickly is up for 6th man of the year. He didn't close the game last night. I think he played like 24 minutes yesterday. He could have been sad and mopey about like Josh Hart's closing over me or whatever. He's not, though. Like these guys are genuinely happy for each other. And I think RJ has I think getting Hart has helped RJ, because I just think he needed, one, a kick up in the ass, but two, I just think Hart's a guy who brings positive energy. And there were two ways for RJ to react, right? Like he could be sad and mopey that he wasn't closing games and all this shit, or he can react the way he has, especially since the All-Star break, where it's like there is more effort defensively. There is signs of improved decision-making offensively, particularly on drives. Like you're seeing some positive stuff there. And I think all of that stuff, everything, all of it is connected. Like it's not just disparate pieces coming together. Like this feels like, okay, the organization as a whole has grown and developed over like these 3 seasons under Leon Rose. And what you're seeing this season is like, I'm not saying they're the best front office in the league, but like, I think what you're seeing is a front office and an organization that is aligned, right? That was like a big thing, right? Forever. Oh, are they aligned? Are they aligned? Are they in alignment? This feels aligned. This feels like, okay, we want to win ball games, but we don't want to just punt on young talent. Like, we want to develop our own guys and we want to keep our options available in the future, right? Like, so if the Josh Hart trade hadn't worked out, guess what? They were not out a lottery pick. They were out 4 seconds. That's how the trade was constructed. So like they've done a lot of good work. And I think what you're seeing is an organization that's one aligned and now is like matured into really like a well-run team at this point.
Well, that was their magnum opus in Tibbs X Analytics was Reddish, who by all accounts was not pleased with not playing. That's unsurprising. Into Hart, who is pleased to score 0 points and have 7 offensive rebounds, 4 steals, 8 blocks, whatever it is he wants to do.
And not start. I mean, he was starting in Portland, right? So
Reddish, who likes starting, who likes the ball in his hands. Hart, who sees, Hart, after his first couple games, Hart could be like, hey, there's no basketball reason that the Barrett kid should be starting over me. But even yesterday in his press conference, he made sure to be like, the starters are starters for a reason. And we come off the bench. We're good depth off the bench. Like, he loves his role. There's no complaint about his role. Different from Reddish. Now, go to on the court, Reddish, defensive potential high because of his frame, because of his natural instincts. Defensive output was low. And it's because after he took a bump or took a hit or got beat once, he was all right on the rest of that play. Josh Hart could literally not be paid millions of dollars to stop trying on every single play. So, that's a difference in hustle that I think is reflective of their opinion on their roles and whatnot. And then get to offense. It's the same thing. Reddish, a lot of potential. Hart, a lot of good and now. And to me, that was the magnum opus of the growth of the relationship between the coaching staff and the front office and the data nerds in the back. McBride and Grimes, they kind of all agreed on. Everyone liked those guys. Hart for Reddish, like, this was the ultimate, everything adds up positively for the Knicks. They should make this trade on the court, off the court, with the starters.
The price.
Yeah,
like the price was easy.
Everything added up. Hart, look at his age, entering his prime years. Reddish, they were doing the developing for another team.
And they knew Hart, right? Like, he's CAA, obviously. So like they have all that intel on him. He's like literally BFFs with Jalen Brunson. Like, honestly, those two looked like they were about to like they needed to get a room after that press conference yesterday, that post game. They were just like super lovey-dovey during that, which was cute to see. And then also like Julius played with him in LA. So like, I don't know if him and Julius are tight, but I think like I can already see when he's on the court with Julius, like you can see this with like some of the other guys in the team, right? Like when they're on the court with Julius, like, oh shit, we got to get the ball to Julius right now. Like Josh Hart will be on the floor with Julius and he's just like doing Josh Hart things. Like, he's not intimidated by Julius. I think they view each other as peers. And like that shit matters. Like, it matters especially if you're making an in-season acquisition, you need to bring someone who's good. And it's a guy who you presumably want to put in your rotation. Like, you have to know, and you have to have the confidence that guy is going to be able to come in and not be like super deferential and need like 3 weeks to like get the confidence to play. Like, Josh Hart came in and like from day one was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do Josh Hart stuff and like that's it. Like, I'm gonna like dive on the floor. I'm gonna be flying around on the defensive glass. I'm gonna pump fake on 17 open threes a game. I'm gonna just do shit. And like, there's just a confidence he plays with that, like, I think they knew that. I mean, they knew that because of all the intel they have in him, and just you watch him play enough. Like it was, yeah, like you said, like it's just like I'm sure that like Walt Perrin, he was a fucking draft guy during his. I mean, he's still a draft guy, but like I'm sure he had fucking intel on him from when he was in the draft.
Hart today is a very like Perrin prospect, so I won't say too much about Perrin's type because I know you guys have something coming on that, but so I'll tease it and make people go read that article when it's out, but on the strict.land. But basically, I think that when you look at the Perrin type, like it so applies to this whole roster, but also the Thibodeau type applies to the whole roster, but also that Wesley, like they really found a group of guys that they really like. All of Julius's misguided, passionate outbursts aside, I think that Wes loves that guy. Like when Randall has a big game, Uncle Wes is the first guy jumping on him and patting his back and all that. This is the family vibe that they very cornily said from day one that they were going to establish. They've done it. Can
I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
I do want to ask specifically on Randall because I know you're someone who stuck on Julius Randle Island even when many, including the two people you're talking to now, hopped off.
I've always been a huge Randall supporter.
I never wavered. But and I think beyond court play, a lot of people were concerned about the frustration we saw, kind of the body language, the attitude, whatever. Can you speak kind of maybe to both, what led you to kind of have faith in Randall, and maybe what the front office saw that whatever was going on with him mentally, they didn't have worries about whether his focus would return and that part of it as well.
Sure. So,
but before Kris answers that question, ready for the underdogs, the upsets, and the unbelievable action from DraftKings Sportsbook? The biggest tournament in college basketball is here. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 on college hoops and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, for a limited time, all customers can score a no-sweat bet during round 1 and 2 of the tournament. Go to the app, opt in, and place a no-sweat bet this weekend. If it doesn't hit, you'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. The only thing I bet on this weekend, and everybody should do this every fucking year in the NCAA tournament, by the way, is you just fade Purdue on the spread. I mean, they ended up fucking losing, which is crazy. But you just fade them on the spread every year. Matt Painter is a garbage tournament coach. That's like the one thing I know about college basketball. Every year, I make money doing it. So there's your tip for me. All right, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up with code XXX. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Win or lose. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code XXX. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Matt Painter fucking sucks. And that's the easiest money everybody can make every year. All right, sorry, Kris, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think to start with the team, you kind of got to go back in time. And I spoke about this in the thread I did last night. I didn't connect it to Randall that heavily, but it's kind of indistinguishable. The Knicks were linked to Chris Paul like 2 or 3 times over separate years. Ian Begley was first to report that they were interested in Kyle Lowry. Jonathan Macri first to report that they'd be laying out the red carpet for Fred VanVleet that year, who didn't end up even giving them a meeting. Since the first year of the Leon Rose regime, they've been trying to get someone to take the ball out of the hands of Julius Randle, someone to handle the ball who should be handling a basketball at a high clip. It was first Fred VanVleet, that didn't work. There's Chris Paul, kicked the tires on that. Next year, Chris Paul again. Year after, probably asked again, knowing Leon. Kyle Lowry last offseason, that ended up aging poorly for Miami. New York's line in the sand was that third year. They wanted, 255, whatever it was. And Miami was like, no, we'll do the 375, whatever, 380, whatever that
380, yeah.
And that's why Lowry went there. The Knicks always have their price they're willing to pay, and they won't go above it, as evidenced by Lowry, Paul, Mitchell, whoever else negotiations. But they've been trying to get a point guard to take the ball out of Randall's hands for a very long time. For me personally, knowing that they were doing that, and then seeing specifically in a game against the Washington Wizards how Emmanuel quickly was able to set Randall up in his spots, and how much different of a player Randall looked like when he was getting set up in his spots as opposed to getting to his spots, probably dribbling off of his knee or spinning into something on the way there. And basically they got that guard in Brunson the next summer, but I thought Quickly was capable of being that guard, even if they didn't get Brunson. And so for once, I looked at the team. I said they don't need Paul, they don't need Lowry. Even if they don't get this year's point guard target, which was Brunson, they'll have someone who can set Randall up in his spots. For the team, they probably saw Brunson as someone they'd be landing for a little earlier than the rest of us knew that, obviously. And they told Randall, and I believe I reported this like publicly, they told Randall last season at the end of it that if he was back this season, it would be one, in a significantly smaller role, and two, he would have a good active relationship with a sports psychologist. So the Knicks were very firm with him in regards to what they wanted from him if they were going to keep featuring him in their offense and keep him in Madison Square Garden. As we know, the Knicks have their price. They did not want to attach any draft capital to a guy that was all NBA prior and recently prior, and because they thought he could be good again. And so they wouldn't attach draft capital to dump him. They knew if they just kept him around with a real point guard, he would look much better. They got Brunson, kept him around. Randall's got the ball a lot less, and you're seeing what you're seeing. So for me, I thought the talent was always there. For me, I thought the mental resolve wasn't, but he would learn for it to be, and if not on his own, because the team was going to make him. And he came out and seemingly learned a lot. If you listen to his interview responses now, it's very different. He used to kind of answer with like, I am not mad. Do not put in the newspaper that I'm mad. I'm not mad. And now it's like, hey, man, wins, losses. I got to go home to my two kids. I got a lot to deal with right now. I'm just going to get to the film when I get to it and work on what I can do better. And it's like, all right, honesty, I think that they're just in a spot now where the Knicks have put so much into his support staff in a way, but not, that's all uncapped areas of the league. It's not like they had to roster someone to make Randall work. They needed a point guard regardless, whether that was Quickly, who got promoted, or a signing that they made. I always thought that the on-court move that made Randall work was happening no matter what. They apparently knew it was happening no matter what, as the people trying to execute it every offseason. For them, it was just trusting in his talent that they knew he had when they extended him. Because remember, they didn't sign him, but they did choose to extend him.
Yeah. The Randall thing was always interesting because it was like, I mean, again, like I obviously was 100% wrong about it, but like to me, I mean, it speaks again to like their ability, or not their ability, but like they don't panic. I think that's probably the best thing to put it. The best way to put it, like they have not made panic trades. They've never acted out of desperation. Like I don't like that. And that was the weird thing with like how the draft day trade to clear the cap space was framed. It was like desperate. Like I know for a fact that they were on the phones, they were like actively looking. I think they'd already planned at that point. Like I think they had an idea of who was going to be available, what that meant relative to their board. While people were still talking about them trading up for Ivy, like I know for sure that was like done. Like they were not going to be able to make that trade. About an hour before the draft, I know that like they were in conversations with both OKC and with Cleveland about trading out of 11. And OKC came in because they had the extra picks. They came in and offered those 3 protected firsts, and the Knicks were happy to take that over what Cleveland was offering. So, like, they end up getting, again, like the big thing is, and this applies to Randall, is they did not panic. Like, I think we were all like, what the fuck, man? If we come back here with Tibbs and Randall and we still have all these vets, like, what the fuck is going to happen? What is the plan? And they've just kind of like slowly, methodically done what I think people would have signed up for at the start of the year, which is like, okay, even if Randall is still here, right, we're going to clear out a rotate. We're going to clear out minutes to make sure Emmanuel quickly plays more. We're going to clear out minutes so that Deuce McBride gets a shot. We're going to have Quentin Grimes start. We're going to have like they've slowly, methodically like pieced together this team, and it's now playing at such an optimal level, a high level. I think since they made the rotation change, they've been a 53 win team, or they're playing at a 53 win pace. And since they got Josh Hart, they're playing like a 65 win pace. They're really good. And that doesn't happen. They like, if I was running the front office, we wouldn't have even had the opportunity to see it. And I think that's how a lot of people were this past offseason, because it was like, that's how bad last year was for Randall. So, it just goes to show you, like, one, NBA teams are always operating with more information than we are sitting on the outside. But two, like, that they saw a path, or they at least believed in a path where he could be part of a successful Knicks team this season, and they didn't need to move him to be a successful team. And so, like, yeah, look, like, I think, he's basically admitted it himself, right? That he did, like, he talked about it. Like, Johnny Bryant came to see him and was like, would you want to be your own fucking teammate, dude? Like, would you want to be your teammate last year? And he was like, yeah, probably not. And so, like, yeah, you're right. Like, I'll take your word for it that they, like, told him to get, go get some fucking, like seriously, go get some help mentally. Which is one that's actually, like, if they did do that, that's really good. Like, that's good that they are encouraging players.
Well, they brought in,
yeah,
who is essentially a meditation and sports psychologist expert, who Randall, works with, but also Bryant. Every Knick has, I believe you and I spoke about this the last time I came on this show, was every Knick has a coach they run through their pregame workout with. For Grimes, it's Darren Erman. For Hart, it's Rick Brunson, unsurprisingly. For Barrett, it's Johnny Bryant. I remember Greer always out for Fournier, and Rose. But
so Greer's the guy they're like, yeah, you can work with the dudes we don't give a shit about, actually.
I think from what I've noticed, it's that the vets gravitate towards him more than the other way around. I think
he's the oldest assistant, right? So
yeah, and he's a Tibbs staple on all his staffs. So, yeah. So I think it's of note, and I say this because Mitchell Robinson works with Othello Harrington. Isaiah Hartenstein works with Scott King, the famous laptop wielder. But I do think it's interesting that Randall's guy is Johnny Bryant, not a big man coach. They have Randall work with Bryant, and they just walk through post-ups. They walk through post-ups, and he lays them in light, goes to the free throw line, just shoots free throws. Like, it's a very calm, remember you can do this kind of workout. It's not like, hey, we're going to practice that floater. He's got that down. His confidence in that is good. He's just there to get accustomed to the court. I think he's totally revamped his process. I spoke to Mark Berman over the summer, who said he never got a chance to write about Julius's new pregame routine because Randall was sat for the rest of the year and not given media availability by the time Mark wanted to ask him about it. But Randall stands with the team now for the national anthem, does not, stay in the locker room or whatever. After the anthem, this is the real insight you guys were looking for. The whole team breaks out of the singular line and raps and high fives. Randall's gone by then. So the second the anthem has a couple words left, he walks away. He goes over to his sideline where he literally points up. He gathers himself mentally. He just stands there with his eyes closed and gets ready for the game. as the team is all high-fiving each other, and then they all meet by the bench. He's not late or anything. They all meet at the bench at the same time. So whatever it is exactly, he's found what works because he's having an all-NBA season. I love how things like winning, things like availability, these all matter in these award races, right? But the guy who's played almost every single game, if not every single game this season, the guy who's on the 5th best team in the Harder Conference, the guy putting up 25, 10, and 4 assists on good percentages from everywhere.
His turnovers are much lower this season too, right?
He can't make all NBA over Lauri Markkanen on a losing team because we have to respect what Danny Ainge is building. That's what gets me, because everyone cares about availability when they need to get their favorite player. Well, your guy only played 68 games. Mine played 71. Randall's going to be on pace to probably play 80. So that doesn't matter anymore because it's someone on – it's a name that people don't find sexy. Okay, well, that aside, what about the raw counting stats? Those always matter. Oh, and remember the Randall fans on last year? 25, 10, and 5, 25, 10, and 5, whatever it was. He's doing 24, 10, and 4 on a better team with higher efficiency. Isn't that better? It's the logical inconsistencies always bother me. That's why I tweeted about Scotty Barnes' Rookie of the Year at 5 a.m. last night. And how if they go with that logic this year, Keegan Murray deserves the award. But no one's talking about Keegan Murray for the award because that's not how the award works. Cade or Mobley should have won it last year the same way it should be Paolo this year, and then probably Williams in second with Murray in third,
Yeah, I mean,
not Trevor Keels.
Is he on the team again? Is he on 10-day? Or
yeah, he's back on the team because no one claimed him when he was off the team.
He got a two-way, right?
And then they put him on I think he was on a 2-way, and then now they made Daquan Jeffries.
He's a 10-day. Yeah, I think he's on 10-day.
Yeah, they made Daquan Jeffries a 2-way player, and then they signed Keels to a 2-way a week ago, and they waived Moses Brown. So they gave Jeffries Keels as 2-way, and then brought in Moses Brown, and then gave Keels Moses Brown's 2-way.
Yeah, and Moses Brown is now on the Nets, which is hilarious.
And when asked about it, he said it's nice to be home. So I didn't say that about New York. I don't get differences, but
Scotty Barnes is not him. TLDR. That's the
main thing. Keegan Murray is actually having like a fucking really, really fantastic rookie season. But yeah, I mean, I think like the Randall part of it is, and I'll say this, like I didn't think even at the start of this year I was not impressed. I was like, I still thought he was playing pretty selfishly. I still think the defensive effort at the start of the year was not up to snuff. I know he was
even that Sacramento game, right? That was
yeah, he got ejected.
I remember that as being like, we thought it seemed like he had turned a real corner, which now it's easy to say he did, but that was kind of a regression, right? Where, I think he got one tech, which was very understandable, but he kept going and that essentially lost the game.
And well, no, they won the game, but yeah, like they could have lost the game. And it's like, and they were already on out, like I think Brunson ends up getting hurt in the fourth quarter of that game, but I think somebody else was out that game too. So they're already shorthanded, and it's like, what are you doing? But like, I think it's important to recognize, like, when you make the type of change that he's making, which is like pretty drastic, like he's obviously, worked out a process to like center himself better during games and like be more mentally focused, mentally alert, whatever, have just better energy mentally and like be in a better place mentally. That is a process in and of itself. And so I think early in the season, like some of like just like we were still seeing some of the annoying stuff. Should we still see it? Like yesterday at the end of the third quarter, he had 2 straight possessions where he's standing in front of Quickly with his hand up, like screaming to get the ball. And I'm happy he Quickly ignored him both times. But it's like he still has these outbursts of like being a petulant fucking baby. But I think what you're seeing is like when he has those outbursts, there is an attempt to like, there's almost like a realization of like, okay, I should like fucking relax. And like, you're still going to get it, right? Like we saw the Clippers game last weekend where he like totally lost his shit, but to his credit, he bounces back the next day against the Lakers. And it's like, he doesn't let that stuff linger. And I think like, that's all I can ask for. And all anybody really can ask for of him and of any player is like, and Tibbs talked about this yesterday. I actually think Tibbs is post game comments were really, really fucking good yesterday. But he talked about like you're not always gonna have a good day. Like
My
everybody,
fingers almost fell off. I was trying to post everything he said because it was also like I knew it would do well on Twitter because people want to hear him address these things. I was like, he's in the middle of answering the next question. I'm tweeting the last one. I'm there on my phone. My laptop's falling. It's under my armpit, and I'm just in the back of the press. He was on fire yesterday.
Yeah, he was in. He's definitely in a very good place mentally right now. The man was fucking yucking it up before the game. But like he talked about like it's a long season. You're not always gonna have a good day. You're gonna have a bad day, but like don't like it's okay to have a bad day. Just come in the next day and make that a great day. Like put the team first, all that type of stuff. And I feel like you're seeing that with guys across the board, right? Like Mitch obviously was the one that got brought up this week because apparently that was a big crisis. Thanks for creating that storm, Kris.
Listen, man, I've thought many a time about how that would just completely not be a story if I had not posted anything. In my defense, I posted it at 2 a.m. It took less than 10 minutes for it to have 100 likes. I was like, why are you all awake?
It's because the Knicks won a very, very late night game against Portland that day.
Fred asked Mitch about it, and you could tell PR had told Mitch not to answer anything about it because he had already said his piece on Instagram and addressed it, and Mitch just goes like, "Leave me alone, man," and it was so good.
Yeah, and so like you've seen that with him. Like we've seen that with RJ. Like RJ had his little fucking flare up right where he didn't answer questions from the media, and then there was a game I forgot who it was we were playing, maybe the Lakers game or not. No, Star Wars and Lakers game, but it was another game where he didn't close. It was the Wizards right after All-Star break, I think, where he didn't close that game. Quick and Hart were on the floor, and every time they showed the sideline, you could kind of sense like RJ was trying to be like a good teammate, but he was like mopey. He's like not happy, and like he's come through that, and I think he's put in the effort to like be better, right? Obviously Randall, like, but we've seen that quickly. I'm sure he wasn't unhappy about his role in minutes earlier in the season. He's come through that. Like all these dudes have, like they're all in their own way, kind of doing what Tibbs talked about yesterday, where it's like you can have a bad day. Everybody has bad days, but like don't let that become a habit, right? Like snap out of it. Make sure that you're aware when you have a bad day, and then move on from it. And yeah, I think like Randall is obviously like the guy has turned so much around this year. That doesn't mean he's perfect. Like I didn't love his defense for about 3 quarters yesterday. And in the fourth quarter, he was like, okay, fine, I'll be fucking serious now. Like he really, I thought was awesome in the fourth quarter yesterday. And I thought he was awesome in a way that's like very encouraging because he wasn't on fire yesterday. He didn't have it going yesterday. And when he checked back in the fourth quarter, I think one of the first plays he had was he ran a DHO and gave the ball to RJ. RJ got downhill. So like those are the things I'm most encouraged about when I watch Randall this year is like, yes, does he still have moments where he tries to be like, fucking 06 Kobe? Yeah, he's going to do that. But like, there's also moments and stretches where he understands like when somebody else has it going and when he should defer, and he actively does defer to those guys. So, I mean, we saw that in the double overtime game against Boston, right? Where he's like at some point in overtime, he was just like, fuck it, dude. Quickly's got it going. I'm tired as fuck. Like, let him cook. And like, but like, those are to me like the most encouraging things about it. And I think that's true. That's like leadership in the best way that like I would want to see from him, and really from any top player on your team, where it's like some nights maybe it isn't your night, and when other dudes have it rolling, it's okay. Like it's okay to let them do the heavy lifting, and that probably does require some type of like security. And I feel like maybe there was an insecurity that came out of him last year where he felt like he had to prove like all this shit. And now, yes, having a Brunson helps, but I think also like I think his relationship, like I think him and Quickly are like, they have some like weird big brother, little brother thing going on.
Randall?
Well, I mean, I think they've always had pretty decent chemistry. Like obviously the first year that was like Quickly Randall. I mean, the numbers bear this out. Randall was getting to the rim more, getting a higher free throw rate, taking better shots, playing with quickly than with Al for the other. I think with Rose is similar as well. But last year, Quickly was the only player to post a positive net rating with Randall. Right? And to your point, Kris, earlier, like I don't think that was a coincidence. So,
well, Shwin's favorite stat from last year, I'll let you say it. 2-man pairings is your setup.
Oh yeah, I mean he's the only guy that had a positive one with Julius, right? Like everybody else was negative with him. It's crazy, actually.
So,
he was the only one. Yeah. So
nuts. It's just, I put it like this with Quickly, and I use New York Knicks as my example. This is what I've always said with Quickly, and I've said when Obi Toppin goes on the court, there is a clear uptick in offensive movement, offensive things, passes, off-ball screens. That Obi gets things going, right? If you guys remember, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna bring him up. Sorry. When Frank Ntilikina walked on the court in orange and blue, the entire defensive level stepped up. All 5 guys were defending at a higher level than they were before he was on the court. And Emmanuel has both of those things going for him. When he gets on the court, the offense is more productive. The ball moves faster. Things are up tempo. And when he's playing defense, he's so locked in. Guys feel lame if they're not also that locked in. I think Josh Hart brings that same energy on both ends of the court. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Knicks have these guys out the wazoo. Like Brunson is someone who just goes and David and Goliath's the largest centers in the league. Like that.
Well, Randall talked about this after the game yesterday too, where he mentioned like he was talking about like Brunson, like he talked about like he's a great scorer and all that stuff too, but he's like he's in there like taking charges. Like I think Brunson's number 1 in the league, right? In charges taken. So like it's kind of funny. Like he's not a great defender, but this is like the Nash thing, where like Nash wasn't a great defender, but Nash would like take charges, and that has a lot of value. Like it inherently has value defensively. So like even though Brunson has moments where I'm like, can you like not die on that screen? But the other thing is like he does this thing where he goes under screens almost intentionally to draw like a moving screen violation. So that's part of it. He takes charges. He just plays with a physicality that I think like, yeah, like he's never going to be a great defender, but he's not like a negligent defender. He's not an unaware defender. He's not a minus in that capacity.
Yeah. I mean, I think that probably speaks to, guys know their strengths and weaknesses, but they're still able to find kind of a way to contribute. You've seen that with Hartenstein. His role wasn't exactly tailored. I mean, you have a lot of guys, I think, on this roster who, like, they don't have a guy who's like a perfect player. I mean, Brunson, I think, comes close to it in terms of as a scorer. He's because of what do you want to call his bag. He can kind of attack in so many different ways that he's pretty tough to stop offensively. But if you look at the other players, when it comes to Quickly, it's tough still for him to get all the way to the rim all the time, right? Like or just kind of blow by guys who are like really great defenders. So he has to, but he does a lot of other things better. Or with Barrett, he doesn't have the pull up game. So you have a lot of these guys who have some flaws, but I think Tibbs deserves a lot of credit for kind of being able to find a way for them to play to their strengths and contribute in spite or playing away from some of their weaknesses. We've talked a lot about kind of where the Knicks have been, but as we look, it's good to kind of take stock of how far they've come and give credit where it's due. We're in a pretty exciting place right now. We're looking at it looks like, barring a collapse or by either the Knicks or someone else, they're going to be in the 5th seed. What are your guys' expectations? Do you think that's just house money at this point? I know in the post game yesterday, Shwin, I don't remember Frank Barrett was mentioned, or Jeff, whatever you want to call him. He was mentioning this, that, it'd be good for Knicks fans to treat this kind of as house money and not overreact. Especially if, the whole Donovan Mitchell things comes up. But at the same time, this is not an also ran anymore, right? My stock of this team right now is I think they are as good as you can be without me saying they are a true title contender. They are like just below that. the only reason I'm starting to question every time I see them do things like beat a team with an MVP candidate that's the top team in the West without really, they didn't shoot that well. Like Brunson and Randall were fine. Quickly was 1 for 7 from 3, and I honestly thought by his standards it was a bad game. So like, every time I do have to start questioning that. What does it take for me to see them as a contender? But I want to throw it. I'll throw it to you guys. Like, what are your expectations? Both for closing the season and like, what are you looking to see for the playoffs? And not to say that whether the season is a success based on that, but we're going to incrementally change our expectations. So, what are you hoping to see, and what are your expectations there?
I'll let Kris go.
Thanks. On my earlier appearance on, TBPN earlier this year, I came on here with Shwin, and I said, depending on how seeding goes, right, depending on how things shake out, I was very aware that out of Cleveland's final 17 games, if you look at games that were both on the road and against opponents over 500, that Cleveland had 2 such games in their last 17. I knew they would be finishing ahead of the Knickerbockers. But with how seeding breaks out with the Nets trade and everything, the Eastern Conference Finals is not out of the question for this New York Knicks team. And the reason I say that is because when you look at teams like Atlanta that have made runs to the Eastern Conference Finals because of how the seeding broke out for them, this Knicks team is better prepared defensively and offensively, in my opinion, for playoff basketball. So if they were able to break through, then that opens the possibility of, that's a thing that's happened before. There's precedent there. When you look at the specific teams in the running, Josh Hart couldn't talk enough about the Knicks' depth yesterday. I don't love the Cavaliers' playoff rotation. They, chose certain guys over other certain guys, Kevin Love on the outs. I don't love their wings. And I think the Knicks aren't some, Los Angeles Clippers of wings. They're not the wing U of the NBA, but the wings that the Knicks do have, Grimes, Barrett, Hart, are all guys that I cannot see having trouble guarding Karis LeVert. I cannot see them having trouble guarding Isaac Okoro. So I do believe that this Knicks team is better prepared for a playoff series than this Cleveland team. I do believe that in the second round, the 2 guys in Philadelphia will be officiated differently than they are in the regular season. I think that will impact the game of basketball that they play. I think that the Knicks have a shot against them. I think that the Knicks have a shot against a team like Brooklyn to finish them off in 5 games. I think that depending on how things work out here, no matter what, to me, when the Knicks meet Milwaukee in the playoffs, they will be eliminated. When the Knicks meet Boston in the playoffs, they will likely be eliminated. And I know the regular season series is really poor evidence of that. But I also do believe that this Boston team is one with the top end talent to just kind of figure shit out in a playoff setting. And so, yeah, I would buy Tatum stock before that series, right? It's just as simple as that. I do think, though, that the thing of the Knicks don't have the guy is overblown, and it's become the lens through which people view the Knicks over the last couple years. I remember tweeting about how important it was that they were making margin moves, like making second-round picks appear out of nowhere for Ed Davis. And the majority of my responses were, to be honest, I don't have the energy to care about this. No one cares. We need a star. Who the hell is Ed Davis? And to me, it was like, well, just wait. Now Jalen Brunson's on the team thanks to Ed Davis and those second-round picks. So all this works out to say, I do think the Knicks are better prepared than people think. I think Brunson and Randall are both better than the national media thinks. I think Quickly is much better than the national media thinks. I think Barrett's better than the national media thinks. I think Robinson and Hart are stars in their roles. I think Hartenstein has grown into a star in his role. Quickly, star in his role. Yeah, I like him in his role this year. Brunson, love him in his role this year for the Knicks. I just think that everyone does what they're supposed to do well. This is a team that was constructed to a point where there's specialization going on. Hart and Robinson are trying their butts off to get offensive rebounds, and it doesn't matter that they're crashing so hard because the other guys cover it with athleticism and with shooting, and it all adds up. Shwin and I agreed after the deadline. This team doesn't have, if you set up like your hex graph, like shooting, defense, playmaking, ball handling, there's not one of those areas to me where like you've got a convex thing going on, like or concave thing going on,
where you reach the outs, where they're elite at something. Right?
I think they've got good everything. I think they've got great rebounding, great defense. Shooting is decent, solid, kind of good. Everything else is actually either definitely good, definitely very good, or great or better. This is an all-around Knicks team that is built to bully people. There's no stat for getting bumped by Brunson, Hart, Randall, Barrett, Grimes, Robinson, if McBride plays. Like these guys are all built like brick houses of what. That's exhausting. Like I remember as a basketball player, my least favorite kids to play against when I played the 4 for 1 year were the super sweaty, slippery kids that like just elbow the hell out of you, and they're all like there's no
right here, bro. You can call him Shwin.
There's no shot. There's no shot they're getting the ball. They're still hooking your arm, trying to get you called for a foul in case they do. Like that's the Knicks' whole team. The Knicks' whole team sucks to play against. I would hate that. I always see memes that crack me up. Imagine taking a test in Algebra 2 and then having to guard Bronny James and Zaire Wade. And it's like, imagine having to guard Brunson for 2 hours. Like that sucks. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is someone I like a lot. I always thought he was an actual unfair recipient of the LeBron-associated hatred. Like Danny Green was actually bad. I didn't think KCP was terrible with those teams. I've always rooted for him as a result of that. I'll be honest. You guys know I'm soft for players that I think are overhated or underrated. If there's anyone that I like less than the average person likes to root for them, it's probably because I've seen them covered enough. And I like new stories. I love niche stories in the league. Yeah, you know where I'm going there. It's just all things are adding up for this team right now, and it's nice to see it have all been calculated. The Knicks didn't happen upon any of this stuff.
Yeah, there's one team that actually, imagine how little fun it would be to play against the Knicks for 2 hours and then immediately have to get back on the plane. There's one team that actually has to do that now. So thanks. You can thank your teammate John Morant for that, Memphis Grizzlies. Sorry, Shwin, I did want to get your answer on the two. One other follow-up, Kris, because I've asked Shwin this before. So you mentioned that, you think it's a little overblown, the Knicks don't have a star thing. That's really the only argument at this point I think people have to say they're not a true contender. That's what's keeping me. But offensively, I think Brunson can be that guy. But that aside, do you think that, everyone's talking about, they still have to make the final move? Me and Shwin has mentioned this a lot. Like, if that move involves killing the depth and everything they have, is that even worth it? And I'm curious, do you think moves like the Josh Hart move, can they, so to speak, Josh Hart their way into that tier without needing to make that next trade? I would certainly like that path rather than trading for a guy like Levine. But even, let's say a guy like Embiid becomes available, or like one of those true upper echelon guys. Do you think that at this point they because of how Randall and Brunson and how the depth has progressed, do you think that they can Josh Hart their way, or they can continue to make these kind of calculated moves as opposed to like the motherload move and use that to get into contention? Or do you think they still need another star?
at a certain point, I'll quote one of my favorite basketball minds that I've discovered through Twitter that I would have never known about if I just stuck to ESPN and TV. Richard Goodman will always tell you that Ricky G will always tell you that the playoffs is about dudes. It's about dudes and guys. And I do think that Jalen Brunson is showing the NBA landscape this season that whether they were ready for it or not, he can be a dude. The fact that he had 40 points in a playoff game last year and people don't see him as a dude is reflective of how hard it is to reach that status. You need to not just break through, you need to really break all the way through. You need to be clear of, for everyone to agree you're a star, you really need to be a star. And Brunson has been that for the Knicks this season. You see it when he's out, you see it when he's in. And so I do think that because of these guys being so good, they are closer than people think. They have been closer than people think. But they still need a guy. And the reason I say that is because when you look at yesterday's game, Thibodeau was faced with the problem of having too many good players for not enough rotation, not enough spots on the court, right? Like, Brunson was struggling, but he's your best player. You guys were talking about this on the timeline. Brunson's struggling, but he's your best player. Grimes struggling, but he's been starting all year. You rely on his defense. Hart's been great. Barrett was great last night, 8 of 10 on 2-pointers. All of that, Thibodeau just had to choose the best 5 guys. I do think that they need a player where no matter what kind of game he's having, he is in the final 5 minutes. Like, there is a possibility that if Brunson were having an awful game, he would still just get to go out no matter what because he's that good. But, one star isn't enough to win anything. So if he really is, Brunson and Randall are the 2 and the 3, that puts you in a great spot to have a number 1 who's someone who can do high usage, who can score, who can play make, who can defend. You just want a guy who's not a question mark in any area as a rock of your team, which will then allow you to have even better bench units and more staggering with the rest of your depth and this and that. But I do think consolidation and then into, assets that they later parlay into a real star, it will come this summer because they're aware of this as a team as well. Whether it's moving Barrett this summer so it's easier for them to just close with Quickly and Brunson and Hart, or Quickly and Brunson and Grimes. And then later on, taking other picks they got for Barrett and whatever, Anunoby as an ancillary guy, and then getting that star. Like, there are going to be moves coming that make things a little easier on Thibodeau or whoever the head coach is to choose his closing lineup. And I say that not because he needs help choosing his closing lineup, but because they would like to have players good enough where it's not a question of if they'll close or not. They have so many really good guys that they could all close over each other. They would like some top shelf. These guys are playing 34 minimum, 40 in the playoffs, like that kind of talent that just wins you big games in the NBA today.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they can. I think they probably do need a higher end star at some point. But like for this season, I think they're fine. I think they can definitely win a first round series against Cleveland. I think they can beat anybody in the East other than Milwaukee in a series. I'm not saying they'd be the favorite in every series, but I think they could beat any team in a series other than Milwaukee. Unfortunately, with how the seeding works, it looks like if they are the 5 seed, then they have no ability to go further than the second round because Milwaukee is almost certainly going to be the 1 seed now. So I mean that's just that is what it is. I like their matchups against Cleveland. Cleveland doesn't have wings, which helps us. I think our guard defenders match up well with their guards offensively as well as you can against guys like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. I just think when it comes to like stars and all that type of shit, I just think people focus on it too much because it's like, how many guys are actually worth? Like, how many actual stars of that caliber that can move the needle and turn you into a contender are there? I don't think there's more than like 10 or 12 of those guys max. And it's why like I don't give a fuck about Zach LaVine. I don't care about Zach LaVine. I don't care about OG Anunoby. I don't
Is Zach
care
LaVine
about...
better than Brunson at this point?
No, he's not. If he was better than Brunson, like would the Bulls be better than us? Yes, probably. Like I don't really understand the argument for it. And quite frankly, like I've seen Jalen Brunson ball out in the playoffs. I've seen Zach LaVine play a series in the playoffs and look fine, I guess. Look okay. In a series
there was a tweet I saw that he considers himself one of the best on-ball defenders in the league.
Yeah, I mean, he could. Yeah, I'm hoping he must have a really good dealer. But like I just don't like. I think when we talk about this with the Knicks, like, yeah, they need a guy that's better. I agree, but it's like, who actually is that guy? Like is Paul
Booker
George?
Seems to be
the guy. Booker's probably the worst player that I think would be like would elevate the team, if that makes sense. Like he's like the worst level of player where I still think like if you get him, that probably elevates your team into a contender level, or at least you're in that conversation now.
Well, I mean, so there's a few people have brought up, contract aside, and the people I respect too. So I don't think this is the craziest one. And I know you're a huge Jimmy Butler fan. Is that a guy you think, if healthy and all that, he's a guy that, let's just talk about one season, forget the contract. Does he rise the ceiling of this team?
Probably, but like at that point, I don't know. Like you're already a pretty interior focused scoring team. I know we take a lot of threes but we're not a great 3-point shooting team. Jimmy Butler obviously doesn't help that. And he plays inside out. Julius Randle plays inside out. Mitchell Robinson just plays inside. Isaiah Hartenstein, he can do more, but he's not like scoring outside of the paint really. The stretch 5 dream is over. And then, Brunson plays inside out. RJ plays inside out. So it's like, I don't know. I just think
at this point quickly plays inside out. Right?
Yeah, I think you need a little bit more diversity in how you're scoring. And I think that's why I think Booker's appealing, because he is a true 3-level scorer. He's gravity, out beyond the arc even. And that I think they need a guy like that. But it's like, again, how many of those dudes are there? How many will be available? And how many are good enough? Like Zach LaVine qualifies as that type of a scorer. Does he make you a contender? I don't think so. I don't even think he really moves the needle all that much for us. Like if Paul George hit the market, like I don't even know if I would do that for Paul George at this point. The guy's 32? Like he's 32. He's got his own set of injury concerns. Everybody talks about Kawhi. I mean, Paul George is.
I'm a big PG-13 guy. We share a birthday, so I always from when I was 10 was like, that's my guy, and then whatever 2K13 I got drafted to the Pacers in my first 2K, so I've always been a Paul George fan for weird reasons. I've just kind of followed his career pretty closely. It pains me to say that we are at the point where it is now a question of if he might be on the way down, which stinks, but it's also part of this cycle that happens. And I think the Knicks have been really adamant about acquiring guys before or going into their prime. They're going to get this summer Hart on a 3 for 42, whatever he signs that secures him for his prime years. Brunson's secured for his prime years. Randall is secured for his prime years. Barrett is secured for the 4 years leading up to his athletic prime, which could start during the contract feasibly, biologically estimated. What's up?
Do you think a quickly extension comes this summer too, or?
That would be my best guess. Yeah, that would be my best guess. Would be that whether it's a 5 for 110, whatever.
They can't do a 5-year extension this summer. That can only happen if it's a max contract. Which they're not going to give a max.
No. So then for, whatever.
Yeah.
But the last time I seriously sat and thought about it, 484 was the number I came up with. Maybe They do 490, call it a day. Say, hey, you get paid less than Brunson and Barrett, but it's still a lot. If I'm Quickly's representation, I just sit down, bring my own projector, roll the Boston tape. That's all they need. So, and then after that, I'll say, okay, what number? And if it's something that is disrespectful, I would be pretty offended at that point, because after him not getting chances to start for years, finally breaking out under conditions that he thought were suboptimal, leading up to then his management thought were suboptimal, he still broke out regardless. And then once he did that, you didn't want to do what it took to keep him. Like they will be offended by that. They should be offended by that. They will walk. I think the Knicks will reach a deal with them before that's even a question.
Yeah,
taking care of family, I think, is the tagline to sell you on that, is that they're going to take care of family there.
They're big Vin Diesel guys.
Shout out Colin.
But so and kind of on the note of going after guys. So if PG is kind of out, the guy I brought up who Shwin disagrees with me, I think I'm a little higher, or maybe not disagree, but I think I'm a little higher on this. There is a good chance that things go south in Philly. Harden can be a free agent this summer. Do you think that Embiid is? I mean, obviously, you kick the tires on a guy like that no matter what. Do you think that is a guy that might see, or do you think how much does he's weirdly been pretty healthy. I think you even mentioned this, Shwin, recently, since his early career injuries. Hasn't had a lot of serious stuff. It's just a weird, fingers here and that kind of thing. Do you think that's a possibility? At all, as the next move? It's probably not an ideal fit with Randall, but it's Joel fucking Embiid.
Yeah, I do think that's a possibility. I don't think it's a coincidence that as this process, literally the process, has taken its course, they finally got Embiid a co-star that's really good. Harden has been spectacular this season, no doubt about it. He's doing all the things that I would always get at him for not doing in his, 50, 10, and 11 games, where it's he's actually just, it's the basketball game isn't, oh, it's a Harden day, so Houston's going to win. Oh, Harden's off today, so Houston's going to lose. It's Harden runs this offense, and he's also a scoring threat as one of the option trees, one of the branches of the option tree of the offense. And I love that. I think that's where he's optimized. And I think it's nice when you get to play with the arguably, most dominant two-way big of your era. So, for them, I think that team's really good. Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey as third and fourth guys. Sounds good to me. Tobias Harris on that contract, hamstrings things a bit. And then the bench wasn't great until they got McDaniels and all these little things. I think Embiid's just been in Philly too long. I think he's going to realize soon that he's allowed to go play somewhere else, that he might want to explore that. If he does, I can tell you right now, there isn't a place he likes playing more than Madison Square Garden. He loves beating the Knicks. He loves beating up on the Knicks. He loves winning basketball games at Madison Square Garden and hearing the crowd hate him. He eats all of that up, and he loves it. And it's why when, early in his career, I used to go catch Philly games a lot because they never lost to the Knicks. And so you would go to see Philly beat New York, but you went to see the show that Joel would put on with Ben, frankly. And I believe that the prospect of doing that 41 games a year at Madison Square Garden with playoffs on top would be really appealing to him, given what they're building now. If you take a look at the Nets franchise that attracted Durant and Irving, it was a team with a solid foundation that people respected. And I think this Knicks team is way better than that team. I think they've got a better coach. I think they've got a better star. I think they've got a better second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth player in the rotation. I think they're all around just much better than that Nets team was, and still have the same amount of flexibility to make moves because they didn't use all their draft picks to assemble this team. So these are things we've harped on a lot, but I could see Embiid for all those reasons being interested in a small move south.
Yeah. I need to see Embiid do something in the playoffs before I'm in on this idea because quite frankly, he's 20 years old. He's never made it
28,
past.
yeah.
Yeah, he's never made it past the second round. I understand like there's some extenuating circumstances there, but I mean, if he's that guy, then I don't think it's asking a lot for him to get out of the second round at some point.
Yeah, I do think that Raptor series, like he was a plus 87 in 7 games. Like that's been
but
a lot of
he
their
couldn't fucking stop drinking Sir Shirley Temples, and he's fucking sucking down fast food in the middle of the playoff series. He had an upset stomach, so he misses a game. Like, I'm sorry, you don't get a pass for that. Like, he's not fucking serious until and I mean like he's still like I know he's been awesome the last 2 months or so, like actually probably the best player in basketball during that time. But like he's still like you'll watch games. There are definitely games where Embiid is just like not interested.
Well,
And,
that's
like,
I forget who it was that said it, but someone said, God, it wasn't was it Jalen Rose who said Embiid's not his MVP because he just takes plays off. And that was funny. He had Jokic as his MVP, but that being the reasoning for Embiid. But like, he's not wrong about Embiid. Embiid takes games off to me. Like, I agree with you.
he just has stretches where I'm like, I don't think you're serious.
I mean, at that talent level, who doesn't? Which player of that talent level doesn't?
Okay,
Kawhi
well, when he gets out of the
literally
second
takes-
round, I'll give him that benefit.
Yeah, and I'm saying that one of the at least the Raptors series, he was a plus 87.
Name me a guy who missed a playoff series because they had an upset stomach because they were sucking down fucking 15 burgers from Five Guys. Name me a guy who did that.
You can think of other reasons that guys have missed series.
Yeah, like actual injuries,
which can be drawn to like whether you keep yourself physically fit. You know what I mean? Like that's just
how is that compare? How is that comparable?
But all right, him sucking down Shirley Temple, is that predictive of what we can expect from him going forward?
It says something about him.
Down Shirley Temples being a medical term here is so funny.
Like it says something about him. I'm sorry. Like you can't sell me on this whole like.
I think you're making it sound like he's missed important games because he decided to fucking Instagram.
He missed a fucking playoff game because of this shit. A series that they win that series,
and then Draymond Green kicked the guy in the nuts and missed the game for that. Like things happen. Like I don't.
Yeah, and guess what? Draymond Green has also won 4 championships. So like if he he's got a little bit more credit for that.
Steph Curry, then I think Embiid would have.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be the best team in basketball the way they were. No, I don't.
You don't think Embiid and Steph Curry would be the best team in
basketball? They were literally the best offense and defense in basketball for 2 years in a row. They were historic offense. You're trying to I'm sorry, I don't necessarily think you just shove Joel Embiid
KD or without KD. You're talking about with KD or without KD?
Before they even got KD, they were the number 1 offense and defense in the NBA for 2 years in a row.
They lost the finals one of those years, by the way. Like so,
yeah, they got to the fucking finals, Stacy. They got to the finals. When Joel Embiid lost to Trae Young at home.
You're gonna give
he lost to Trae Young at home in his playoff series.
That. You're gonna give Draymond a pass for that because he got to play with Steph Curry. But if you trade, you're telling me if you switch Draymond and Embiid, put Embiid on that team is not better.
Can they can't play the same way. They can't play fast. You can't play up and down. You can't go up tempo with Joel fucking Embiid on your team.
And I think the greatest shooter of all time and a top 10 player of all time in Steph Curry would figure out a way to make it work.
You can tell me all the beautiful hypotheticals you want. All I know is for fucking sure they were the best offense and the best defense in basketball for 2 years running, playing Draymond Green at the 5 in closing minutes. And they were the death lineup. And they were the team that everybody was scared of playing. And the league shouldn't even try to win because how can you ever beat these guys?
But if you put this fucking dude there who scores at
they are not going to play at the fucking tempo they played. They played at the fastest
but they would have had other
league.
strengths. They would have changed.
But you're changing the entire environment of the team, and then you're just saying, "Oh, is Joel Embiid better than Draymond Green?" Yes, that does not. That's not how 5-on-5. That does not change. That does not change how. That is not how 5-on-5 basketball works. You're just
talent. It's the talent.
You're right. You're right. Adding talent together always succeeds. You're right. Good point.
No, I'm saying adding like a generational big with
Kyrie Irving. Great.
Curry,
no, you're right. We should trade Jalen Brunson for Kyrie Irving, right? That's what you wanted to do. You were advocating for this.
I didn't say that, actually. I didn't say we should trade Jalen Brunson for Kyrie Irving.
What did you say? You said, "Oh, we should get."
I said
Kyrie
I
Irving
would.
because he's
I said I would trade for Kyrie Irving if the price was really cheap. I don't think. What was the price? 2 first-round picks? I wouldn't have done it for that.
So what would you do it for?
I would have done it for like the fucking Dallas pick. Like it was like people were just saying it's going to be a massive discount. Like why not? Like
why not?
I also
think we're seeing why not.
I believe
you see it every time he plays. You ignore this stuff. No, hold on. I want to say this. You always downplay this stuff, and I understand why. Because your point is like, I'm not in the locker room. I don't have the intel on these guys. I'm not going to judge character, blah blah blah, this shit because I don't have the intel. I think that's fair. But like the fact of the matter is, this shit matters. And I'm sorry, like you can sit here and talk to me about Joel Embiid as this amazing talent because he's unquestionably an amazing talent. I thought he should have won MVP last year. I think he's probably going to win MVP this year. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. He's been a fucking beast those last 2 or 3 months, especially.
I think you're also underselling Steph's talent here. If you think that they're like, that's going to like, oh my God, the fit just wouldn't work. Like without the tempo, they turn into a fucking pumpkin.
That's what makes them great. That's literally what makes them great.
No, what makes them great is that they have great fucking players too. Like that's
and they great players who work in a system, who work in a system, who work in a specific system.
Draymond was
you're not running all kinds of ball and player movement when you have Joel Embiid at the 5. You're not getting up and down the floor with Joel Embiid at the 5. Like you're saying it's unquestionable. You're saying it's unquestionable that they would be just as good, and I reject that. I think it's entirely questionable. I think it's entirely questionable. Not saying it's not possible. I'm saying it's entirely questionable.
It's questionable, but I think they would have. Embiid is.
I think you're underselling Embiid's talent and Steph's talent and Clay's talent.
Like no, I think you're overvaluing individual talent, and
I think you're overstating
and entirely dismissing. You're entirely dismissing. You're entirely dismissing.
Embiid's a fucking joke. Embiid doesn't take shit seriously. He missed 1 playoff game. He's a fucking clown. Fuck him. He's never going to win anything or get out of the second round. Like, no, sorry. I think that's the overstatement here.
I'm saying he hasn't done it. So you can keep fucking talking about how he's going to do it, how he can do it, how he will do it. And that's fine. You can live in the hypothetical world, Stacey. You can tell me every fucking thing you love about Joel Embiid and how he's going to do all these wonderful things. And all I can tell you is that he hasn't fucking done it. He hasn't done it. So when he does it,
Dirk was soft until he won the fucking title too, right? He lost as a 1 seed. That's what everyone said.
I wasn't saying that.
Everyone in the fucking world.
But who cares about everyone? I'm not talking about everyone. You're talking to me. You're talking to me. You're not talking about everyone. So don't fucking talk to me about everyone. I don't care about everyone. I'm telling you what I think.
The point I'm making is that nobody does it until they do. Nobody does it until they did. So if you're only going to go for players who have already done it,
when he's been in the playoffs for 6 straight years, at what point am I allowed to just be like, yeah, I think it's pretty fucking whack that he hasn't made it out of the second round? Is that okay? Am I allowed, or is it just I have to accept that he's going to do it because he's going to do it? Like, I don't really understand.
I mean, you're just going to throw away all the circumstances and like not if you're just
do they have more talent? Did they have more talent last year than Miami?
Yeah, they did.
Okay, and they lost that series in embarrassing fashion. So, like, I'm sorry. I think that says something about Joel Embiid.
You can say that there have been poor performances, and you can also that doesn't mean he's incapable.
Timothy Butler, the great.
I never said he's incapable. I never said he's incapable. What I said is he hasn't done it. And when you're talking about going all in, making a huge push for Joel Embiid, yeah, that worries me because he's never done it. So I'm just going all in on a guy who's never done it, who isn't some exceptional. He's not like some fucking amazing all-time leader. I don't need him to be. Okay, I'm not asking him to be. But when you're trading, you're going all in for a guy. This is it. This is the move. And after this move, this is the team for the next however many years. Like there are no outs. There's no other serious talent we're gonna add. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that stuff matters. I think it matters that he has had no playoff success at a meaningful level. I think it matters that he's never been able to elevate his team to get to a conference final.
He's had a talent. Like if you kept Brunson, Randall, Hart quickly, so like the crux of the trade was RJ, Obi, and Pick. So if you kept those core 4, and they would trade Mitch. If you kept those 4, do you think he's had a team that good around him, like that balanced?
I mean, what?
Simmons, Embiid, the Simmons, Embiid, Redick, Butler, Harris year is the year.
Butler was it.
And here's the thing.
State, I think they would have won a title.
Here's the thing with that team, though, is that, and this is why when I hear all of this, I err on the side of Stacy with the foundation of Shwin's point. And the reason I say that is because Embiid didn't make it that year with Butler, but there were also several reports that the team was forcing the ball into Simmons' hands and not Butler's. They wanted Ben being the playmaker, the table setter. And so Butler's role was not natural for him. Jimmy's not a super PG Cam Reddish style wing. You know, he's the Jimmy RJ Jaylen Brown type of wing where he's a little more stiff and doesn't have the super high feel, just natural whatever. So I can see why that didn't work out great and why that left Embiid in a tough spot. I can see why Ben Simmons, no, I'm not talking about the one layup. I'm talking about the series of Ben Simmons made it hard for Joel to beat the Atlanta Hawks. But I also think that as a credit to Joel, if you're going to talk about him as this type of player, just like overcome that at some point. Now he is 29. Until he's 31, 32, I'm not going to say he can't do it. But if you want to predict he's not going to do it based on what you've seen so far, I don't hate it. I just do think that it's important to note the 2 times he almost made the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm willing to chalk both of those up to Ben Simmons overall just making the vibes off the court awful, making him on the court.
He's also played his entire career for a guy who has blown 10,000 3-1 leads in the playoffs. So
Doc Rivers
with other very talented players. So you want to talk about you can't run a good offense around Embiid that shares the ball or plays with pace. Well, he's played in. You haven't seen him get that opportunity much either.
Players, you play how your top players, to a large extent, want to play. Like you're just not. Like I don't see how you watch Joel Embiid play. You think he's gonna be fucking setting screens, moving off ball, cutting, fucking zipping the ball around, making.
How did the Warriors play before Steve Kerr got there? They didn't play their best player played that way before. He played Mark Jackson ball, and then all of a sudden he didn't play Mark Jackson ball anymore.
So Joel Embiid is going to Joel Embiid's going to be he's going to be
but I think he could play
super
with
ball
pace.
happy guy.
I think he could play with pace. I think he could probably he could do more things than he's asked to do. And I think they would probably be creative. I mean, Steve Kerr would use him probably in some interesting triangle derivative stuff, right? I think it would be you're right to say it wouldn't be the same team. But I think that
I know that the team they had was the best team in basketball for 2 years.
What I'll say is this: Embiid is not a tough player, I think, to play with. That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I disagree with that. Very strongly.
I think that's where we disagree.
And I think Harden actually, I'm genuinely impressed by how Harden has adapted his game this year to maximize Embiid. I hate saying that because it's not like he deserves the credit for how Embiid is playing, but how they've blended together, I think, is very for a star wing of Harden's usage and skill set and play
Harden took the half step back to push Embiid a full step forward.
Yeah, and I think Maxi's benefited from it too. So I'm actually very impressed by how Harden's played this year, which is probably the first time I've ever said anything nice about Harden in my life. But it's just I think teams play at paces and that's how they play. And Philly is, they're never going to be, they're basically the Knicks in terms of pace. Can the Knicks play faster? Maybe, but at the same time, I'm I don't think Jalen Brunson's a fucking open court guard. I think Randall can run at times, but he's not a particularly great transition player. RJ and Obi are the two guys that I'm okay, yeah, they're true. They'd be much better in a up-tempo team, probably.
Quickly for sure, though, too.
Maybe I don't know. I think Quickly's good at pushing. I'm not sure he's a great. I think he's good at getting the ball up the floor fast. I think he's good at getting the team into some offense fast. I'm not sure he's a dynamite transition player. I think he's good opportunistically in pace. But to bring it back, I think you have Joel Embiid, you have James Harden.
Oh, Hart is another reason. Sorry, just Hart is a really good transition player.
Yeah, I just think you have guys like that. You're just not gonna play an up tempo style, and that's fine because to make it a fact, it's hard for large human beings to play up tempo for long minutes. We know this. This is a fact. Mitch doesn't usually get played over 32, 33 minutes. And that's how most bigs are. I mean, what was it? Roy Hibbert? He didn't play more than 28 minutes a game, I remember, because they were just they'd figured out that when he plays more than that, it's very hard for him. His performance levels dip. Embiid is obviously much better than fucking Roy Hibbert, and he's better than Mitch. But like, I think it's just harder for big guys to be like, okay, go play. We're gonna play the fastest. We're gonna play a top.
I don't think they
pace.
would have played as fast, but I don't think they would have had to. And I think their half court offense, I disagree. That would have been some like stagnant. Like they wouldn't have been able to do all the cutting and all the shit that they do to unlock Steph and Clay. Like I still think they could have done that. They could have run interesting things without Embiid. Embiid isn't some great passer, but with those guys, I think, and with Kerr, I think they could have simplified the reads easy enough. I do agree. Like I'm not dismissing the fact that his lack of playoff success shouldn't be spoken for, but I do think that if you talk, that's why I think the real question is, do they need to make that move, or should they keep making good moves and build like a roster full of guys who are playoff level? Or do, like, if they make that move for a star, realistically, it's probably going to be a guy who hasn't had that level of success before.
Wait for 2025. That would be like, I think you just keep working the margins. Somebody's going to become available for a decent price. Like, I think you have to avoid these all-in trades. I'm like just very much against it. I don't think they're worth it. I think
so. You're saying you want to go. So your big thing is free agency over gutting the roster. That's your main.
Yeah, like I think you can. I still think there are places to move the margins a little bit in our favor. Like RJ's had an up and down season, right? Like, to be generous. Do you believe in him? Do you play that out for another year? Like, I'm not in a rush to go upgrade that position because, like, I think our baseline is already really good. So I'd rather wait to see if RJ can take that next step. You know, can you?
But does RJ plus Obi get you someone like probably not Mikal Bridges, but that type of player? That's something that they could look at. Okay, so that's a no.
Yeah. No,
well, what would RJ plus Obi plus picks is probably the best thing they can offer this that you would.
Yeah, I mean that's
comfortable dealing, right?
I mean, it'd be like somebody like Booker or somebody like. I mean, even Embiid. Like, the thing is, like, I wouldn't love that trade, but I think you make it. Like, I think you kind of have to make it. And so,
but no, I'm talking more like RJ and Obi and like not the farm of picks, but like that. I think those two guys are guys like in RJ's case, that would be a hard blow. I'm not, but like you'd probably be getting a pretty good player, and those are the two guys you could probably stomach losing. So I guess like the question is, what does that get you right now?
Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't get you a star, is it really worth it? And like, what level of star are you getting? I don't know.
If it's RJ, Obi, and whatever amount of picks it takes to get Mikal Bridges, is that worth it? Maybe. I mean, that much. If you think that puts you over the top, does it? I don't know. Because it would probably make them an elite defensive team.
I don't think it puts you over the top. Like I just don't think it puts you over the top. I think it makes you.
You're replacing RJ with Mikal Bridges. Probably fits better next to Brunson and Randall. Spaces the floor well. Obviously, really great.
I'm going to be completely honest. I'm still just not like a big believer in this Mikal Bridges thing. Like, I get that he's scoring very well, and
I'm not talking about him as a star. I'm talking about him as like.
I get it, but like I think we need a star. Like I think I don't think like I'm okay trading RJ in a scenario where it's like, I don't know. Like I would assume advanced metrics don't like Jaylen Brown as much as they like Mikal Bridges, but I would rather do that for Jaylen Brown than I would for Mikal Bridges, because I think you need somebody who's more dynamic. I think you have to risk, like if you're trading RJ, it needs to be to take a risk on somebody who's a more dynamic offensively than Mikal Bridges is. And again, I know Mikal Bridges
optimal, because I would just argue that Mikal Bridges is like a cleaner fit.
Yeah, he is,
especially with the defense. But that's a good point. Like, but you'd rather you need that upside in terms of talent more than what we would give you. That's great.
All right, let's end World War III there. All right, that's a good place to end the pod. Kris, thank you so much for coming on. Let the people know where they can find you and plug anything that you'd like to plug.
Yeah, my name will be written right there. That's my Twitter handle. I'm not going to try to spell it or bother to spell it for you. Just there you go. And on what you should go check out, I just did a thread of 14 tweets, because I'm a madman, of the links between the Knicks and the Mavericks team building over the last couple of years. I intentionally excluded all the Knicks, Hardaway Jr., Ntilikina, Trey Burke, all these guys, because they just weren't. They were the forgotten chapter of the book I wanted to write. I the winners write history, so I left them out. But I thought I did a good job, frankly, of explaining just how much this Knicks front office bets on themselves and their own evaluations of things. And yes, it's fun. It's a fun read for Knicks fans, frankly. I think it's a fun read for people who root for the Knicks, but I also think it's an interesting read for fans of any team into team building. So just a little short Twitter thread. You can go check it out. And you should also check out on YouTube my beat report on the Knicks Nuggets game for WFUV Sports. It's just WFUV Sports on YouTube. It'll be one of the newer videos. My face will be on there. Go give that a click. 4 or 5 minutes of your time, and you'll get some inside info from Josh Hart on his style of play, why he describes himself as a bull in a china shop out there on the court, and you also just hear my recap of the Knicks takedown of one of the top players in the league who plays for the top team in the West. So great win for the Knicks. Great show to come on timing wise because of that win, and great co-hosts to spend the time with. Thank you guys for having me, and thanks to listeners for listening.
Will do. Again, Kris, thanks so much for coming on. Stacy, let people know where they can find you. Plug anything you'd like to plug.
Stacy Patton 89 on Twitter, and I'll plug Chris's thread and tell anyone who hasn't been blocked or muted by Howard Beck to please at him on the thread, particularly the parts that mention how much better the Knicks are doing than Dallas.
All right, I have nothing to plug myself, so I'm just going to plug all the work at the Strickland, and check out the post-game stuff with Sam and Tyrese and Jeff. They're doing a great job on there. And the draft pods that Prez is doing, all the recaps. Check out the merch. We got new merch. We're rocking some of it right now, and there is more in the pipeline that's on the way. And yeah, that is it. That is our pod for today. I hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you on Friday.